Welcome back to the OShow. I'm Laura Babcock, and this is part 2 of our viewers' questions being answered by our politics panel. To direct this just to you, Robert, to start, because you've been on council and you understand how it all works. How can they fire the city manager? What can be done when it comes to the city manager's performance, which a lot of people, including some on this panel, have found to be lacking?
Well, it's obvious the council has the power to fire the manager. Okay, through that. I guess you have to get more of the group of the councillors together to work together on it. You have to have a good reason, though, and it's just not what the council feels that they're done wrong, but they need to have evidence on issues that aren't being addressed properly by the city manager. So they'd have to have a good evidence, good background on the issues that's going on. But it can be done. It's been done before. But it costs us as taxpayers, our viewers, Laura, yourself, Graham, everybody here, it costs us to move them along because you have to buy them out and you have to have a good reason. And then the next thing is, where do you find a good manager? It's tough out there to find them. Everybody's looking for one.
So Robert's right. We have to buy her out, pay her 2 years and say goodbye. Yeah. Say goodbye right now. And then start the search. The reason we would fire her now is because she's not a great city manager, and I don't think she has proven to be a great city manager. So let's just bite the bullet, pay $500,000, which is what it will cost us, $250 a year times 2 years left in her contract. Happens every day in the corporate world.
If you have a group that lets her go, there could be repercussions that the city then has to pay for, right? Is it without cause? Is it with cause, right? So you also don't want a situation where that's also going to cost you money. And again, based on all the things that's going on in our city, nobody would want to spend extra cash giving as a payout or a buyout, whatever the term is, because then people will say, well, that money could have been used to do X, Y, and Z.
Well, I wanted to just touch on the reputational damage that goes to firing the city manager. And if she doesn't have opportunity to come back at us for something like that, us meaning the city, if we don't cross our T's and dot our I's in terms of why we think the city thinks, why council thinks that she needs to go, that's my only piece on that.
So I know we've let go at least 2 that I can remember in my memory. One, I think, because of a scandal, and the other was because council just didn't like the pushback they were getting. So I'm not sure that there was a lot of reasons documented to get rid of it, the second case. I think it was just that they didn't like being challenged. The city manager was part of the previous Old Guard councils, was hired by them, was there, correct me if I'm wrong, anyone on the panel, during the Sewergate cover-up, has also not done very well managing the last election in the city clerk's office. There were lots of mistakes. There's been a super heavy reliance on consultants. And to your point, Kojo, and I'm going to bring us to the next viewer question here, when you said at this time when the city needs money and we've got so many crushing emergencies happening and with homelessness, etc., why spend money buying out a senior bureaucrat? Well, that same bureaucrat suggested spending $50,000 on a consultant last week to look into office budgets of councillors. $50,000 on an exercise that could have probably taken somebody a couple of days to complete. So I think that she's costing us money as she goes, costing us money by not communicating, costing us money by relying too heavily on consultants. And to Graham's point, this happens. We spend a ton of money on lawsuits in this city, stuff that council did wrong. And here we are quibbling over a payout for a city manager who is simply not living up to what this council needs. But that's up to council. What can be done about the consultant culture or consultitis, as somebody said, one of our viewers said? What can we do about this reliance by staff, and it seems like many departments, going out and hiring consultants for things, and as Graham pointed out on our last politics panel, not even giving the consultant the right directive from council before spending our tax dollars?
Let's take the office budget for example. I think this is something that the councillors could have gotten together, had a public meeting about it, special GIC, to talk about it, right? Like I get that there are certain areas in our city that have offices and others don't. What does that mean? Well, get together and talk about it and figure out a systematic way of addressing it. But to go out and spend 50,000 on something that could be done through discussion, or even city staff themselves, it's a little ridiculous. I also think that this is also an issue that we are seeing, is that councillors are abdicating their duty, right? They are elected to make the decisions, whether we agree or not. They are there to make the decisions. But then what ends up happening is that they placate to their base, or how they are going to be perceived vis-a-vis other decisions that have been made, so that they don't have to make the decision and they aren't seen as the bad councillor, or the councillor that is not listening. So I think that's what's happening here.
I agree with Kojo. Sorry, I'm sorry.
No longer on cable. The OShow's not on cable anymore.
Those words together is in that word. I think the most important thing about the consultants part of it, though, is that we lose track of them. They're given out, they go away, contracts are awarded. Who these contracts are, some of these contracts in my mind have been questionable. Not that I could point to them and say, this is wrong, but I could say, this is too close of a connection between people. And we're a very close community. And some people are getting rich off of public contracts. We need to have more transparency. Who's getting the contracts? What was the process like to get the contracts? Was it just awarded, or was it a bid, a tendering? And is there a tracking process? Let's track them. What was the deliverables? Did they come in? That in itself, if we had that, would have negated the whole Red Hill Express Parkway issue, because the consultant's report would have come in, people would have seen it, it would have been tracked through a system, and we would have known about it. That is where and if we demand accountability on them, then perhaps the usage of them will become more rationalized.
So just think about that. You're blowing my mind, Margaret, and I'll leave Graham and I as last because we're both consultants, so we've got our own view on this. But the fact that the Red Hill, right, a consultant's report came in saying, got put in a secret drawer, not discovered until way later, till files were dropped on a spectator reporter's desk, $11 million in a public inquiry that I pushed for and others on this panel pushed for, so we could get to the bottom of what happened, because people died on that highway. It's a life or death scandal. And then there's going to be lawsuits, right? So many millions of dollars are being spent because of poor management of the city. So when it comes to a city manager's contract being broken, I don't care. I don't care if there's worse stuff going on in the city. But let me go to you, Robert. Did you find that council was too reliant on consultants when you were on the council, or was there merit for them? What's your feeling around this?
Well, when I was on council, there was less use of consultants in the last 4 years and this year. Even though many of us raised our eyes when somebody, a councillor or staff, would say we need to put this out to consultant to get more information. For a lot of things, the councillors are up to date on what's going on and some knowledge. They can make the decisions. As Kojo and Margaret, some of these things could be, as the councillor's office budgets, there's certain things you can talk about, but you could have a public meeting and talk about this and explain where the money is being used and what for, how busy your office is, how many emails are coming in, how many phone calls, and that because different wards have different needs, right, and different values. So that could be done, and that way people would have a better idea of what's going on. And at that point, I don't think you need a consultant. Between people's comments, public meeting, and the councillors, they could figure out what they need to do.
Let me go to you before I blow up on this one, Graham.
Well, you're right. I'm a long retired consultant, management consultant. So yeah, I earn my living by being hired. I must say, though, we never ever bid for government work because it was always painful. Focusing on the office budget consultant, though, I mean, really, if somebody asked me as a consultant, well, what do you think this is worth? What would this cost? I say, wait a minute, there's 15 people doing the same job. Each of them only have two-person staff. There are only so many variables. Robert's already mentioned half a dozen of them, just literally off the cuff. So let's add another 10. So there's 16, 20 variables, how many emails, how many phone calls, how many public meetings, how many newsletters, and so on. It's not that difficult. We also have an internal auditor general. I mean, those people are trained to do this kind of stuff. I would suggest that what they need to come up with is a 1 or 2 page analysis, and you fill in the information as a counselor. Get one of your staff to do it. Bring them all together, analyze them, and say, here's what we found. This is not worth 50 grand. If I took 50 grand for this, I'd spend like, I don't know, maybe 10 hours on it and take the rest of the money and, have a big party. It's ridiculous. It's Laura, but I think the fundamental reason, though, that we are, and I thank you, Robert, for telling us that you see an increase in the use of consultants. I think staff hire consultants to avoid getting blamed for stuff. I don't think we have a council that is looking to blame people. I think we now have a council that's looking to try to get good work done. Now, they may be getting a little frustrated with the quality of the work that's coming out right now, and I guess we'll maybe talk a little bit more about that. I don't know. But in terms of just throwing a $50,000 number out there to do a basic, like a day's worth of creation of a form is just nuts.
Yep. And you can follow it up with a simple SurveyMonkey tool and get the data, cross-reference it, $5 grand maybe kind of deal. As a consultant, I have turned down many contracts because I've said, you don't need me. You literally don't need to pay my fees for this. You can do it in-house, or you can do it this way, or it's really not necessary, or you already have the answer. Or I've turned down city contracts that have been designed for me, I've been told, when I've been courted at lunch. Oh, but we wrote this for you, Laura. Why aren't you taking it? I'm like, because I don't want to work for the city like that. I don't want to do this work. I don't think it's worth it. So I just want to add a layer of understanding onto this for our audience. You can be a consultant like I currently have been for 20 plus years, where people approach me. I decide whether I share their values. I look at the project to see if I'm the best one for it. I set a price that I think, especially an not-for-profit price, that is reasonable given the work, track it, map it. They come back and tell me if they got value for it. It's all transparent. That's how I do my business. But there are also circumstances where city staff not only hire consultants so that they can't be blamed, because it's the old blame the consultant, also because the consultant will do the work, right? Sometimes I've been told, oh, you're going to work harder than us, right? Or they don't feel they have the exact expertise, so they can kind of push it off their desk. I mean, who doesn't want to use a big pool of money to push work off their desk to somebody else that's going to take them out for lunch? I mean, it's a pretty sweet deal for some cities. And also, I know of, from anecdotal evidence, consultants contracts that were created, given out as sort of thank yous for political help, right? I mean, and then we had the thing of the millions of dollars going to friends of a family we found out about a few months ago, another big scandal. There's so many in this city, we forget which ones are the front page. The point is this: there can be great consultants who have specific expertise, who are ethical and give good value and track that stuff back. That's great. Do that when we need them. I'm not against expertise, Hamilton, at all. But having this kind of knee-jerk reaction of let's get a consultant, who of our friends can do it, which former city person can do it, who do we want to go for lunch with, that crap has to stop. So apparently there is a list, because I talked to Councillor Kretsch about this, there is a list of consultants hired by the city. One of our OShow viewers looked at it, and there were a number that were hired for emergency reasons that didn't go through the normal tender process. Love to know what those are all about, right? So we need more eyes on this, and I'm feeling confident that to our OShow viewers who asked the question, councillors are aware of our concerns. If you're going to use our money for a consultant, you better be able to tell us how they were hired, who they are, what they're doing for it. And if council's going to read it, there was even a consultant's report that was done, I believe, on area rating for $240,000. And it was quoted in the media from our mayor at the time and a councillor that they hadn't read it, right, before going into the meeting, and had no intention to. So, I mean, this stuff is crazy. We've got to get a handle on our taxes. Go ahead, Greg.
It's interesting that you triggered a thought for me. That area rating, basically $250,000 study by a consultant. You do remember they eventually did talk about it, and the next thing they did was literally took out colored markers and redrew the maps that the consultant had proposed because, quote, they knew better, and they said so.
And this is another question from a viewer. Why are there, I asked the question publicly as well, what is the point of having a huge city staff, massive budgets. The mayor's budget staff alone is what, $1 million? What is the point of having all of this infrastructure and all of this intelligence and a representative council that we voted for if when it comes to something like what to do with the encampment protocol, their response is last week, let's go to community consultations again? I mean, so the question from our viewers is, why do we hire them to represent us if when it gets tough, they just throw it back at a consultation PR exercise with us? What more can we tell them to help them know how we feel about doing their job? So let me start with you on this one, Margaret. Once again, council kicks it back out to the busy public who are already paying heavy property taxes, 5.8% increase. They throw it back on us. For what purpose?
Cannot make a decision. To say, again, we're not going to actually make the decision. We're going to go back. Now, I'm going to step back for a second because, there's a lot that people put on community consultation, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like community is sometimes considered the be all and end all in the way in which we should be proceeding with stuff, right? We don't go ahead without asking the community what the community wants. So we've got this sort of thing that we can, knee-jerk reaction to, we'll just ask what the community wants because we forgot what we asked them the last time, or we didn't get the response we were looking for the last time, right? Or the people didn't come out like they should have the last time. We need to get people, if you've got an issue, to say something to your elected representatives about it and not bitch and grouse and complain to each other about it. But if you actually just open your doors all the time and listen to what the people are telling you every single day, then you wouldn't need to go out and specifically ask around particular topics. You would already know.
Can I go to you, Robert? What did you think when council once again deferred the encampment protocol decision to give a window for community consultation? What was your response watching that entire debate?
Well, for me, it's the council, certain council don't want to take responsibility for a voter saying something down the road. I mean, this could be an election issue down the road, but it's early in the term, so people forget about it, okay? But I can remember when I was on council and committees and that, if a councillor didn't want or didn't like to vote on something, they were at what we call the ante room, the lunchroom. And they'd come back after the vote was over. They didn't want to vote on it because they look bad on me, or I have not a conflict, but I have a concern what it'll look like on me voting how I voted that way. So that's what it is. But some of them don't want to take the responsibility because it's going to come back to haunt them possibly down the road or immediately. So
it's hiding, right? Hiding, it's cowardice and convenience to throw it back to us. That's certainly how it feels.
Yeah, look, I agree with the former councillor. It's like this is politicking 101. I don't want to get blowback from people that voted for me. So let me just throw it somewhere else. And we're definitely seeing this. And let me tie this into our previous comment about office budget. Let's imagine that City Council decided on a software program that all councillors and the mayors use that tell us the number of emails that come in, the type of incidents, the issues being raised, so that now when you come to a discussion, everybody's on the same page. Councillor from Ward 10, how many emails did you get on this issue? Councillor from Ward 5, how many emails did you get on this issue? Because everybody just says stuff without actual data, and then we throw it to a consultant, and then we are nowhere. And that's what's breeding the frustration in the community with constituents, and it's just frustrating. So I think for me, that would be an example of how to bring some accountability to those two things. Let's get a software that all councillors and the mayor use that informs the decisions that are made so that we don't have to depend on consultants.
Graham?
Well, look, if you're a councillor and you view your job as a customer service representative, then this is the kind of bullshit that you do. Is you look for more feedback. If you view yourself as a leader, you make a decision. Look, I could go back 40 years and now as an aged gay activist, if leaders in this country said, well, let's get some more public consultation on this. Do you like queers or not? the majority would have said, no, we don't like queers. We don't trust them and we don't want them anywhere near our children. So therefore, the decision will have to be what? That we don't put forward gay rights amendments. That's what would happen. The civil rights movement, same thing. If you took majority votes at the time, let's hear what people have to say about integration. Nobody wanted it, except those who wanted it, which was, I think, probably a fairly small minority. I grew up through that period. So leadership is the issue here. And Robert's absolutely right. I mean, the fact that we have that, you know, Robert can tell the story about people going into the lunchroom to avoid a recorded vote. I mean, what does that tell you about how people view their jobs? The problem is they view it as a job, number one, i.e. I want to keep it. I don't want to get fired next time. So they do this kind of nonsense. They're still doing it, by the way, in my opinion. Some of them.
Thank you so much for watching the OShow.